Well, good morning, church at home. It's fantastic to see you all this morning.
Yeah, we love getting to connect with you here online. We wanted to take the first few minutes just to engage as a community and maybe start some conversation.
Yeah, this is us trying to connect directly with you. So, pour that cup of coffee, sip it a little bit, and let's just talk. Let's talk everyday life, and we're going to pitch out a topic, okay? So please participate with this. Use the chat column to answer this question. Tell us about a time that you saw a positive police presence. I think it's important to point to that, don't you?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of things that are negative that have trickled up to the news, but I like to think we've all seen our police at a positive place, and just to encourage some of those guys and to know how women, how they matter to us. Tell us a story. Tell us a statement. Tell us a line you've either saw it or are looking for a positive police presence in our local communities.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. You can put that right in the chat online if you're here new today. But for me personally, I think the thing that came to mind when you brought up that question is through social media, actually. I live in Muskego. My name's Melissa Hoffmeister, if we haven't met. And our police chief, Rick Renz, has done a great job of creating a positive environment on social media. Mm-hmm. Now, he's the police chief, but he's posting on his personal page. And I think it's, important for all of us to remember that who we are in our career, it does flow over into our personal life. And so I've loved watching as a Christian, pointing people to Jesus over this past year, just, sharing about what God's teaching him about being a positive encourager in his role as police chief, or just how to bring peace in his own life. And man, it's really challenged me as a Christian of how am I creating influence in my everyday life?
My first encounter with Rick was they posted a coffee with a cop opportunity.
That's fun.
Yeah, it was just at a local coffee house here in Muskego. And anyone who wanted to sit down with a cop and just talk about the community, learn about what's going on, they could. And this was before Rick was chief. I think it might have even been before he was captain. And we just talked. And the awesome thing about, so for one, just making yourself available to anyone who'd want to meet you and ask questions. But from there, Rick never forgot my name, never forgot my story, and every time I'd see him around town, we just kept the conversation going.
That's neat.
For me, that's such a positive police presence, and I'll also brag on him a little bit, just catching him in the act of doing good. But for one, Rick's like always at the coffee shops. Doesn't matter if it's Vintage Grounds or Starbucks here in Muskego. He is always sipping a coffee, but he's also always with someone. Sometimes it's another member of the local community. A lot of times it's his own police staff. The man just really takes to caring for the people who work under him. He wants their story. They don't got their business papers out. He's learning about life and responding to that. Well, once again, because we happen to know where Rick is at with faith, we know it's out of the care of Jesus he's doing so, and that's amazing. But if you haven't heard, Rick is retiring here in Muskego.
Yeah, so happy for him. What a great career that he's lived out here.
Just in the next 2 weeks. Yeah, he's. Thank you so much, Rick, for all you've done. I know this is not goodbye, because the Monday after, I know your coffee shop. I know where you're gonna hang out. But from here, what's kind of fun is the new police chief in Muskego, Steve Westfall, is also someone we've caught in the act of doing good.
Yeah. When I think of Westfall, I think of him as Coach Westfall, because he also doubles as a youth football coach and is actually the coach for one of our sons. So it's fun to watch him in a whole different realm, right? Not the coffee shop, but playing with kids and just understanding the importance of having male role models in young boys' lives and what that looks like, and just being a encourager for maybe some of those boys will grow up to be policemen themselves, and what kind of an influence he gets to have in them.
Yeah,
it's definitely positive.
I'll break up on him a little bit too. And if you're just jumping in now, give us your story. write something in the chat field of where you've seen a positive police presence. But I feel like Steve's always gone that little extra effort too, where he would text us a little highlight clip from our son's football reel. He's pouring over game tape. It's obvious he's doing it all hours of the morning just because
above and beyond for sure.
Beyond.
Yeah.
And then he continues to encourage. So at this point, our son is, his son is graduated from the coaching ages. They're on to high school, paid coaches, things like that. But still, if we see Steve in the weight room, he talks to me, pumps up my son. Just an encouraging guy, and that makes a big deal.
Yeah.
When you got people like that.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, it looks like we got some comments coming in here. Let's pick a few of them. Eric's wife lost her wallet and was turned in, and the police returned it.
That's amazing. That's great.
The question is, if you lost your grocery list, would they return it with groceries?
Ooh, that would be nice. I usually don't put my name on my grocery list, so I think that would be a stretch for them. But maybe, that's good. So thanks for sharing, Eric.
Ooh, Ange and Dan got a good story from this COVID-19 era we're in.
That's a great. I remember those. Remember all those drive-by birthday parties where the police and fire department jumped in. What a great way for them to inspire positive change in our world. Let's make the most of this COVID situation and create some fun. I bet those kids will never forget this year's birthday. So great examples, you guys. I love this. If there's any more examples that you guys want to add to the chat.
I like Micah's. The police lights went on behind him and didn't pull him over.
The heart drops a minute, and then you're like,
well, honestly, and that's part of the turn, right? Is we are used to seeing the lights go on, I'm in trouble. Mm-hmm. I see a police officer, wait, I gotta check what I was just doing.
Yeah.
The old school version, the police kind of just, they walked the streets and they talked at your mailbox. They drove slowly through your neighborhood because they wanted to stop with the game of kickball. I think the world's gotten bigger and budgets have gotten smaller. That's made it hard, but man.
And that's the proactive. Virginia was mentioning the school resource officers, and I had that come to mind too. Of just, I dropped my sons off at school, and there's the police officer outside in the cold, waving, welcoming. It's nice that these kids and adults are seeing a proactive, welcoming position that police officers are coming from.
Just think about that. For every middle schooler and high schooler, like Virginia's saying, that school resource officer is. Yeah. There's positive. I forget the one at our middle school, but I do know he got into playing basketball with the kids. Did a little one-on-one contest, full uniform and everything, and that's what we're talking about. Anyway, let's take this over. So that's the kind of positivity that we're looking for. That's what does happen amongst our police. Encourage those who do. It's been a hard year. Mm-hmm. I know, man, I know some good cops out there. Some that can't wait to retire. Some that just want to quit this job as quickly as they can because they don't get the positive affirmation where they are doing well. And so encourage them where you can when you see them doing good and offering relationship. But we do got to start a church service.
Yes,
so hey,
10 o'clock.
If you came here for the worship service, you are here at the right time. We're going to officially start it right now. I'm Brian Hoffmeister.
And I'm Melissa Hoffmeister.
Yeah, we're hanging out with you just to kick things off a little bit here. We're a church that helps people connect to Jesus in everyday life and in everyday relationships, and even from church at home, even through a screen. We're looking forward to connecting personally with you today.
One of the best ways you can start getting connected is by jumping over to our Connect page online. This is just a way for us to get to know a little bit about you, share as much or as little contact information as you'd like. We'd love to start serving you where you're at, and we'll respond with a coffee card so you can check out a local coffee shop and love on them. But we also have a list of different ways that you can start to engage here at the church locally or online or in the community, just to feel more part of who we are. If you've been connecting a little bit and you feel like you'd like to take a next step, Starting Point that starting point experience is really that next step here at Lake Point. It's a way for you to understand what it means to belong to a community, to really become who God's created you to be, and to help build the church in a way that God's designed our church right here in Muskego in the southeast Milwaukee area. So we'd love for you to check those places out.
Yeah, whether online or in person, we want to start that journey with you. We're ready when you're ready.
Yeah.
Just one big announcement. Can you guess what it is? 2 weeks from now? Drum roll.
Includes little bunnies and an egg and a cross.
Yay! All right, Easter. Easter's coming up. It is the biggest deal, and I would love to have you participate with us. We have 3 different service times we are offering. It's RSVP for in-person. We're limiting it to 35% capacity. And things are kind of on the move right now with sign-up, so it's important that you would grab, like, today. Can I ask you today, if you're doing it in person, just RSVP for that best time that works for your family, so you make sure that you got that slot. And if you're hanging out with us online, we'll be broadcasting at each of those 3 times as well. Looking forward to have you join us that way.
Yeah, that'll be a fun time. Hope to see you in person, or if online works best, that's great. But today, I want to give you a little highlight of what you can expect in our church service. So online experience is a little different than here in person. And so online, we're going to have one song done by our creative team just for you. So enjoy that, worship along wherever you're at. And then we'll transition over to a message from Brian that he's recorded, and really just allow God to speak to you through those moments, both of those moments, and be ready for what he has. Because we're going to end with a brief reflection time. So this is the time where you're going to really think back to what was God speaking to me about this morning, and how can I apply it to my life and my family's life.
That's a special feature to online that we think makes all the difference in this equation. Don't use that as the time to rerun the dishwasher or fold that extra or whatever of laundry. Just like, that's you and Jesus. Have that conversation moment. Looking forward to that at the end.
And then I'll just jump back in and close us out and give you a few last announcements. So really, we're excited to have you here. Would you just pause and pray with me as we jump into our service? God, I'm just so thankful that we can do church at home, that we don't need to be separated in spirit, that through technology we can engage each other, that we can hear your word and through scripture and song. But most of all, God, I just pray that you'd quiet our hearts long enough this morning to be ready for your word, to be ready for you to speak in that quiet whisper to our souls. Just pray for all the distractions of the day to be set aside, that we would know you and be loved by you so deeply. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good.
My name is Nicole Erickson, and this is my story with Jesus. I grew up in the church. My dad was a pastor, so I was considered a PK, a pastor's kid. And so with that comes just a very community-oriented feeling within the church. You do life in the church. All your friends are at church. Youth group is at church. And so with that, I think my life would just revolved around this community aspect of what church was, and it was just my life. But I don't think I had a full understanding of who Jesus was at that point in my life. I was too young. I just kind of went along with it. And so I think it was more of just going with the flow, being a part of a community aspect, just doing what everybody else was doing, but not really understanding the why behind it, because it's what my mom and dad told me to do. My turning moment was when I decided in college that I wanted to study abroad. And with that, I was already in school. I had decided I was going to be a part of InterVarsity Christian Fellowship because that's what I thought I should do as somebody who grew up in the church. Find your friends within a group of people that you have similar faith or lifestyles and things like that. But with that, I just still felt like I didn't have my own identity. So I literally flew across the world to New Zealand to study abroad. I was given multiple options on where I wanted to live, and with that, I was put into a house with different kinds of roommates. And I think it was a really good growing experience for me. It was a turning point because I had people in my life who loved Jesus, and I also had people in my life who didn't know Jesus. And it was just the spectrum of people in my life, and I had a lot of decisions to make. It all had to really do with a road trip that I was on while I was in New Zealand studying abroad. And we were on this road trip traveling in, either the North or the South Island. I don't really remember, but the point is that we had nothing but time. And so with that, me and some of my friends, like I said, some of them were believers and some of them were non-believers. And there was a lot of conversations that happened in the car. And specifically one time that I remember, there were a lot of challenging questions to the pastor's kid. And with that, within those conversations, I found myself realizing how much I really did believe that Jesus was the true Messiah and the person that came to save us, and all of those things that you're kind of told, and I was defending it in a way that was real for me, not just something that I regurgitated because my mom and dad told me to. My life is different now in Jesus because there is a moment in time where you have to make a decision. And when you make that decision, you realize it's for yourself, not for your family. And I did that on that trip for sure. And now I have my own kids, and I can see that full circle as a parent, how I want that to be with my own kids. My parents didn't do anything wrong. They put me in situations that they knew that would instill in me this community aspect. And so I guess I see how it comes full circle, and I want that for my own kids.
Well, how about we all start by giving it up for Nicole? I know we're in a virtual world, but we can do virtual hand claps. Okay, so if you appreciate Nicole and the story she just shared with you, why don't you take a moment to applaud for her right there in the chats section. That covered it all. Those 4 F words represented the whole story of God, the whole gospel of Jesus. Fall, forgiveness, faith, and freedom. All month long here at Lake Point Church, we're getting gospel fluent by understanding how to tell the God story with those 4 F words, your story with those 4 F words, and today we're talking about telling everyone's story. Everyone can have a story in the gospel, again, under the headings of fall, forgiveness, faith, and freedom. The stories of heaven meet earth if we talk about them. Yes, we do believe with St. Francis that we should preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words. Maybe you've heard that. But we also believe Romans 10, which says it is necessary to use words, where no one can believe unless they hear, and no one can hear unless someone tells him. We want to be among those who do the telling. Not because it's some kind of chore, not because we have to, but because we love talking about the things we love about, and what we love most is Jesus, and Jesus first in his life. I'm going to take you back to a time when my pastor growing up was doing a similar set of talks like this, and then challenged us to go out and actually talk to someone about Jesus. Okay, and he had a great way of phrasing it. He said, tell you what, do this, make a prayer right now, and if you mean it, I believe it's going to happen. And the prayer is, God, I am available. If you give me someone that needs me to talk about you, and you make it abundantly clear that this is my opportunity, and if you give me words to speak to them, my promise to you, Jesus, is I'll open my mouth and speak words to that friend about you. Little Brian Hoffmeister was 17 years old when his pastor issued that challenge, and I made that prayer, and I took it seriously. And by the end of the week, here's how the story unfolds. Heading into Wisconsin State Fair, and the friends I was going in with had some kind of version of how they'd forged the hand stamp so that they could get in free. I said, no, I'm good. I'm fine. I'll just pay the ticket. They called me goody two-shoes. They extrapolated it was something about Jesus in my life, and made some religious jokes about it as well. And I'm like, this is really going fantastic at this point. We get inside the state fair. We meet up with about a dozen other friends and acquaintances people we're connected with. And they're like, hey, you should hear from Hoffmeister. He made us all feel bad. He didn't forge the hand stamp, something about Jesus. And they're like, well, tell us about Jesus. We are practicing Wiccans, which I had to look up, and it was hard back then. Google didn't exist. Wiccan is something to the form of being a witch. So I'm surrounded by like a dozen 17 to 19-year-old female witches who want to know why I believe Jesus and what I think about him. How's that for a start? How would you feel in that moment? And actually, again, lean back into that chat column. If you could just grab an emoji that would capture your feelings if the first opportunity that Jesus ever gave you to talk about him came in the form of a dozen teenage witches wanting to know why you believe him. All right? I'd love to see what emojis you come up with that express how you'd feel there. Okay, but this was my 1 Peter 3:15 moment of always be ready to give an answer for the hope that you have. And I didn't lean back into some kind of a canned elevator speech. I didn't take them on a moral tour of the Bible of why lying and cheating your way into state fair was wrong in God's eyes. I just gave them a very Jesus-centered picture of, listen, I know Jesus and what he's done for me on the cross, how much he loves me. And I just love him, and I walk with him from here. My faith and how he's forgiven me is what sets me free to walk with him from here. And I'm just going to keep walking wherever he goes. It's just as simple as that. But what it did is it opened up, first of all, my story in the gospel. But secondly, it opened up what could be everyone's story in the gospel. Those teen witches wanted to hang out on a more regular basis. And they wanted to explore an alternate ending to their story. And for them, their story and where it's at, and this is the kind of stuff we're listening for, is in the course of having a relationship with them, they were looking for a little bit of power in their life, a little bit of control. They had some hurts that they had been through, some areas of distrust that was now trying to turn around and say, I need to collect the power for myself. And I was just like, hey, in my story with Jesus and my freedom, it's not about gaining more power for myself. It's about handing that power over to someone who's trustworthy with it. Just give them a chance to write a different end to their story. That's how the gospel story of God becomes my gospel story, and then it can become everyone's gospel story from there. Here's what I want to pull from my first conversation about Jesus that way that I want to pull over towards yours. You will never get a perfect articulation of Jesus that you just get to carry with you and use wherever you go. Okay, I know that's what a lot of us are waiting for. Like, as soon as I got it nailed down, this is how exactly one talks about God, then I'll do it. No, you never get to. Okay, because it mattered differently for those people in that moment. It's going to look more like you're walking with Jesus, and you're walking with a friend. And then you kind of flex with the words and what needs to be said in that moment from there. Okay, look at Jesus. I dare you to go to the story of Jesus and show me where he did a rehearsed particular articulation of the gospel, just like start to finish for someone. It rarely happens, okay? Sometimes Jesus says it's like sowing seeds, and other times it's like throwing your net and casting fish. To Nicodemus, Jesus says the gospel is being born again. To the woman at the well, he says it's like drinking living water. To a grieving woman, Jesus says, I'm the resurrection and the life. But to a hard-hearted Pharisee like Paul, he says, I'm the one you've persecuted. To the super successful young influencer, the gospel of Jesus says to him, leave your money with the poor and come follow me. To Zacchaeus, it was just as simple as get out of the darn tree and let's hang out over dinner. You know, so many times Jesus made the gospel just as practically simple as saying, come to me or come follow me. He just knew it all follow from there. And other times he provoked with the theological richness of the Son of Man must be lifted up. And then 3 days later, rise again. Lifted up where, Jesus? And what does that accomplish? Like, no, he just got you going. Jesus changed the particulars of what he said to whoever he was particularly talking to. It was always what was needed, most from the timeless gospel to the timely instance he was there in front of them. You just don't get to put the perfect words together and travel it everywhere. The gospel is everyone's story that can unfold with God. But you're going to have to walk with him, and you're going to have to walk with that friend. And God will give you the words along the way. All right, I'm going to give you a couple takeaway principles that I believe we can see in the life of Jesus. Okay, write these down if you like. This is the big learning point here today. First of all, listen to the story that's already there. To share the gospel into someone else's life, listen to the story that's already there. Relationship was important to Jesus. Either he had an ongoing trust with someone that was built up from which he spoke, or if it was just a person in the moment, he would listen very well conscientiously. People just need people to listen to them. They pay professional counselors just to listen to them. You, as someone who loves them in Christ, we'll do it for free. Start there. Secondly, walk through the open door of a hope or a hurt. This is the fall, okay? That is the fall of it. Fall is what starts everyone's gospel story, right? It goes fall, forgiveness, faith, and freedom. So start with the fall. And when someone articulates a hurt or a hope, that's the fall. The hurt is that which should be, but what isn't. It's now lesser. It's a fall. Or hope is, here's where I'm trying to get to, but I'm still stuck down here. I'm fallen. Listen for that part. That's where their gospel story is going to begin. When you've listened long enough to that, that's where you got something to work with. And then from there, third, speak gospel fluently. And fluency is defined with flexibility and familiarity. The familiarity part, that's your 4 F words. That's the fall, the forgiveness, the faith, and the freedom. Okay, so stick with familiar words like that. Whether you use them verbatim or not, or just conceptually, doesn't matter. You just got to know that 4-part progression is the familiar story of the gospel. But secondly, you also use it with some flexibility. Okay, the stories, the illustrations, the challenges most relevant to their hurt, that, or their hope, that the fall that they're in, that's what you speak out most. All right, I think I can teach this better with stories than I can more principles. So let's just try this. One of the people that I was really able to help find Jesus was one of my friend's brothers. Okay, this particular friend of mine, great Christian guy. We talk about Jesus all the time. His brother was more of a pot smoker, disappearing from Jesus' family, everything. Until one day, I got to talk to him. I got to talk to him 1 week, and he wanted nothing to do with God. I got to talk to him a second week. He wanted everything to do with God. And he claims that he found Jesus on a marijuana high in between the two. Now, I am not supporting that as a means of following Jesus, but I was quick to jump in on that of, man, there's going to be a lot of gaps that this friend here needs to fill in. So I spent time talking to him about the fall as he was experiencing it. For him, it's that this world is a mess, and I need to disconnect from it. And sometimes for my mental health, sometimes to make sure that I'm not contributing to the mess that this world is in. And so that was the fall that was all around him, is just wanting to continually disconnect from it all, because the world's a mess. I was able to speak forgiveness and faith to him, though. Like, that's what Jesus really is. I don't know what you experienced last Tuesday, but like, Jesus on the cross given for you, that engages the brokenness. Takes on the mess of the world. It was put on him. He dealt with it. And so now we're out of the mess, even though we're still in the mess, and that's the freedom part. Okay, so now that there's a change within you because of your faith in the forgiveness of Jesus, it's no longer has to be about disconnecting from the world. It's about engaging it or watching him engage it. He's the one who's sitting on all the answers. And so for hours and days and years, I just hung out with him forever, just dreaming of God's plan for the world and how the freedom had begun with what Jesus did on the cross. That's a conversation. That's taking God's story of the gospel and making it everyone's story of the gospel, specifically to where that young man was at. Another area of friendship for me, like I've had a lot of friends in life who are depressed. I'm guessing we all have. Statistically, we probably all have. And there was 2 in particular in their early 30s that jump out to me. They were both in our life at the same time. They were alone. They were anxious because they were alone. They were too anxious to try to fix being alone. They still lived in their childhood home. They didn't have a job. They didn't have significant relationships. They just kind of slowly started coming out to this missional community that was meeting in my living room. And while we were there, I'd like to say that we spoke forgiveness and freedom into them. But really what happened was they got to see and experience the forgiveness and faith of Jesus through the love of other people in the room. It took a lot of other people just giving them all small bits of love. They felt Jesus before they believed in Jesus. They came to know his truth through the tangible love of someone else. And in turn, they chose to believe in it. Like, if that's what you guys are about and that comes from Jesus, then I believe that Jesus is real because I don't experience this somewhere else. We had to use our words. We had to talk about the cross. We had to talk about what changed in us and can change in them. Okay? It wasn't just loving with deeds. The words had to come out. But the freedom that resulted from there is, hey, if Jesus has really fixed my aloneness, if I'm no longer alone, if something transformed me that I couldn't transform myself, then I can get out and live. Not just in this one missional community that I come to once a week, but we're like, hey, you can live that way every day. Because Jesus is with you every day. And so they went out and got a job again. They went out and tried dating again. They went out and got an apartment and moved out of their childhood bedroom again. And it was this new freedom that came through Jesus. Nowadays, what happens most for me, the fallen people I hang out with most are kind of middle-class suburban dads of Muskego. And it's don't throw rocks at me with this illustration. It's tricky because out of all people in the world, like, white middle-aged men are the hardest to ever feel sorry for, right? And they look like they got it together. Maybe even say that they're privileged or whatever. But particularly these white middle-class dads that I hang out with, they're broken people. They feel like failures. They feel like they don't have it all together. And when I get together, we get to talk about that as their fallen in the sense that they feel like they're always letting their kids down. Fallen in the sense that, yeah, for whatever success they have at work, they kind of use it that plenty of them use it to just prop up their image. They know it's a front. They know it's superficial. And they know it's fragile too. You could get laid off at any time, and there goes your significance out the window. They don't understand what their wife is saying to them. Their integrity is sometimes compromised just by what they turn to numb over this sense of failing in the world. All right, and so that's the fall where me and these other dads are talking, and I get to speak to them in terms of forgiveness and faith, like out of my own story, how like I can't do enough. I can't perform enough to just stay loved enough. But in Jesus, I found a love that just stays there. It went to the cross, and nothing could ever be greater than that, and was raised to a new life. And I got a new life in him. That's where I'm putting my faith, not in what I can do and accomplish and earn in a world like this anymore. It's by going back to Jesus with faith. And yeah, sometimes that conversation feels a little bit out of the blue when I bring it up. Other times, fellas are like, man, let me have it, because we've been hanging out this long and I've trusted you this far. So whatever you think that you got to say, Brian, that you think might help me, I'm all ears. I'm going to listen. Okay? That's part of what's going on here is relationship. If you believe you have something that matters to someone else to say it, then you say it. And because out of that track record and history, they trust. And you speak gospel into their situation. And then you come back the next week and speak it again. And speak it again. That's how it goes. There's so many stories I wrote down. I just want to share hundreds of them with you. I guess, let me just jump to one of the last ones. Okay, so I got a missional community that I'm a part of. And what's beautiful about a missional community, if you're not familiar with it, about a dozen people meeting in a living room. They talk life, they talk Jesus, they talk about where they're going with Jesus. And here's what's great, is it's just an eclectic room, right? There's a collection of some dad friends I've made along the way with my kids being in sports, some parents of the clubs that our kids were a part of, some couples and marriages we connect with, some really awesome single people that we love knowing. And they all just kind of come into our living room every other week. And the falls that surface are all across the board, all sorts of fears and worries, all sorts of relationship heartache and healing that they're looking for. Second chances happen, significant losses. And And in the course of having months and years with these people, you tend to see it all in fall. But then you get to experience it all in terms of forgiveness and faith. It's more than a Bible study. It's more than talking about Jesus. We come together to find Jesus and to speak him into each other's lives all over again. The gospel gets spoken with words, and people find Jesus through that. And when they find Jesus, they find the story of where heaven meets earth, just like it did at Easter, where, hey, the glory of heaven, the resurrection of heaven met earth, and we're alive from there. And so every time our mission will community together, it's like a little more freedom comes out of it because a little better walk with Jesus resulted. So I could keep going on and telling you more stories, and I hope you get the point of this. It's fall forgiveness, faith, and freedom. That's everyone's story, okay? But most people are stuck in just part one of that story. Without Jesus, all you get is part one. We are all fallen and helpless without Jesus in our life. And this is where you come in. Plenty of times when I have taken a moment to share the gospel story as someone else's gospel story, they've received it, they loved it, they found Jesus through it. Oh, that's great. There's plenty of times, though, that they rejected it, wasn't for them. I appreciate that's going to be the case sometimes too, but in the middle of it, here's what I also want you to know. Mark 4, verse 26 and 27, this is what the kingdom of God is like, Jesus said. A man scatters the seed on the ground night and day, whether he sleeps or gets up. The seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how. That has happened to me so many times with my friends, where the seeds of the gospel got planted because I was verbal with them at some point in life. And 2, 5, as many as 8 years later, it started to grow. I'm feeling like the farmer was looking around like, I don't remember even planting this stuff anymore. I don't know how this happened. It's going to be the same for you. So what I'm saying is, get started. Start spreading the seeds of the stories of heaven as it becomes the stories here on earth. Talk about the gospel of Jesus. So here's your challenge this week. Okay, first of all, Everyday Gospel, chapter 7. That's the chapter that matches what we're talking about today. It says more about it. There's workspace for it. Grab your copy if you haven't already. It's just $5 on Amazon, or come over to the church and we'll give you one for free. But here's the challenge that comes out of it. It's the same challenge that my pastor gave me way back when I was 17 years old. Promise God your availability this week. I know you don't think you can do it. I know you don't think you know how. Promise God this week, say, I am available. And if you put someone in my life with a clear opportunity and some words to speak, I promise I'll say whatever you give me to say, Jesus. Fall, forgiveness, faith, and freedom. God doesn't give you the opportunity, that's on him. Not presenting your availability, that's on you. This is the turning point of, are we really going to be Christ-like in his mission for the world? Or are we just going to settle for being a bunch of really, really nice people? Whether or not we get ready to open our mouth and use our words with someone who will not know Jesus without him, that's all the difference in that turn. I know you can do it, because I know it's not on you. It's on walking with Jesus and walking with a friend. And I know if you're just available to do that, God's going to do some amazing things with it. I'm going to give you space right now to make that prayer with Jesus if you want. Just a few minutes to collect your thoughts, a few minutes to say, Jesus, I'm available. Jesus, make me ready. And really start to picture and think through, like, what is your readiness really like? Just make yourself available. And let's see 7 days from now, what kind of stories from heaven God helps meet here on earth.